Revelation, Introduction, Part 4, Historical Setting, Emperor Worship. It was common to build temples to the goddess Roma, a personification of the spirit of the empire, and with her worship was associated that of the emperors. In 195 BC, a temple was erected to the goddess Roma at Smyrna. In 29 BC, Augustus granted permission for a building of a temple at Ephesus for the joint worship of Roma and Julius Caesar, and of one at Pergamum for the worship of Roma and himself. This was the first instance of a cult for a living emperor. Augustus did not urge the worship of himself, but in view of the desire of the local people, he doubtless considered such worship a wise measure from a political point of view. Gradually, in those cults, the worship of Roma became less important, and that of the emperor became the salient feature. Worship of the emperor by no means replaced that of the local gods, but was added and served as a means of uniting the empire. Rituals and worship of the emperor were not always easily distinguishable from patriotic ceremonies. At the same time, the worship of a living emperor was discouraged at Rome, though the Senate did officially deify certain dead emperors. Gaius Caligula was the first emperor to urge the worship of himself. Caligula persecuted the Jews for refusing to worship him, and doubtless would also have directed his wrath at Christians had they been significant enough at the time for his notice. His successors were more lenient on the question and did not persecute for nonconformity. The next emperor to make an issue over the worship of himself was Domitian. Christianity was as yet without legal recognition by the Roman government. Such a religion was not likely to be persecuted by the Romans unless it ran afoul of the law. Domitian zealously sought to establish his claim to deity in the minds of the populace, and to force his subjects to worship him. Such conditions of persecution for refusal to worship at the emperor's shrine doubtlessly constitutes the immediate background of John's exile to Patmos, and thus the writing of the book of Revelation. Apparently, the other 11 apostles were dead, and John was the only apostle exiled to the Isle of Patmos. Christianity had entered its second generation. Most of those who had known Christ were now in their graves. The church was faced with the fiercest external threat it had yet known. The church needed a new revelation of Jesus Christ. Thus the visions given to John met a specific need in their own time. Through John's visions, heaven was open to the suffering church. Thus Christians who refused to bow to the emperor were given reassurance that their Lord, now ascended, was standing at the throne of God, thus infinitely transcending in majesty and power any earthly monarch who might demand their worship. Next, Part 5, Theme of the Book of Revelation.